r/pettyrevenge stepsister lied about me, so I destroyed her dad's business. The smug look on Madison's face when she thought I couldn't see her was the moment I knew my stepsister had officially destroyed my life. I was standing in the hallway outside Professor Chen's office, my academic probation letter crumpled in my sweaty palm, watching through the gap in the door as Madison whispered something to our mutual friend Jake. Whatever poison she was dripping into his ear made him glance toward me with pure disgust before shaking his head and walking away. That was the third friend this week who wouldn't even make eye contact with me. This is insane, I muttered, finally pushing into the hallway where Madison was checking her phone with that same satisfied smirk. Oh hey, she said, not even trying to hide her glee. Rough meeting with Chen. I heard about the cheating investigation. My stomach dropped. The cheating investigation was supposed to be confidential. How did you? Word gets around. She shrugged, examining her perfectly manicured nails. Especially when someone's been acting so sketchy lately. First stealing money from Jake's birthday fund, now this academic dishonesty thing. People talk. The hallway felt like it was spinning. I never stole anything from Jake's birthday fund. And I didn't cheat on anything. You know that. Madison's expression shifted to mock concern, the same look she'd perfected over the 2 years since our parents got married. Look, I get that college is stressful, but you can't keep making these bad choices and expect no consequences. What bad choices? My voice was getting louder and students were starting to stare, but I didn't care anymore. Madison, tell me exactly what you think I did wrong. For just a second, her mask slipped. I saw something cold and calculating flash across her face before she rearranged it back into fake sympathy. I'm not doing this here. If you want to talk, we can talk at home. But I was done talking. I've been trying to talk for 3 weeks, ever since my manager at the campus bookstore called me in and fired me over the missing cash from Jake's collection. I tried talking when Professor Chen first pulled me aside about the suspicious similarities between my exam and another student's. I tried talking to Mom and Richard, who just kept saying we needed to work it out as sisters. The problem was, Madison and I weren't sisters. We were two people thrown together by our parents' midlife romance, and she'd made it clear from day one that she wasn't interested in sharing her spotlight with Dad's new stepdaughter. I tried to stay out of her way, focus on my studies, keep my head down. Apparently, that wasn't enough. I watched her walk away, her designer backpack bouncing against her hip, and felt something shift inside my chest. It wasn't sadness anymore, or confusion, or even anger. It was clarity. Madison had been systematically destroying my reputation for weeks, and she was good at it. She had the advantage of being Richard's biological daughter, of having known our shared friend group longer, of being the type of pretty and popular that made people want to believe her version of events. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She thought I was powerless. What Madison didn't know was that being part of this family had given me access to information she'd forgotten I had. Information about her father's business. Information that could change everything. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my photos from last month's family dinner. Time to remind my dear stepsister that she wasn't the only one who knew how to play dirty. The photos on my phone were better than I remembered. Last month's family dinner at Richard's house had been one of those awkward, blended family bonding events Mom insisted we attend, complete with forced conversation and Madison's passive-aggressive comments about my vintage, thrift store clothes. I'd been bored out of my mind, mindlessly taking pictures of the fancy appetizers Mom had stressed over, when Richard got that phone call. He'd stepped into the dining room to take it, not realizing I was still there clearing plates. The conversation had been loud, heated, and very illuminating. I don't care what the inspector wants to see, Richard had snapped into his phone. The concrete mixture ratios are fine. We've been using that formula for 2 years without problems. I'd frozen, pretending to be fascinated by loading the dishwasher while he continued. Look, Marcus, the calcium chloride accelerant saves us 3 days per pour. The city inspector doesn't need to know the exact percentages. Just show him the standard specs if he asks. What made it even better was the stack of invoices sitting right there on Richard's home office desk, visible through the open doorway. I'd glanced over while he was arguing about acceptable moisture levels and modified rebar spacing, and my phone had automatically focused on the paperwork when I'd absently raised it to take another picture of the fancy cheese board. The invoice from Summit Materials Supply was crystal clear in the photo, grade 40 rebar, 50 tons, with a handwritten note in the margin that said, grade 60 spec for Morrison Elementary Project. I wasn't a construction expert, but I'd taken enough math and science classes to know that substituting lower grade materials while billing for higher grade ones was fraud. And when it involved a school foundation, it was the kind of fraud that made headline news. My finger hovered over the photos. This was nuclear-level information. Richard's construction company, Morrison and Associates, had contracts all over the city. If they were cutting corners on an elementary school, what other projects were compromised? But using this would mean going to war with my stepfamily. Mom would never forgive me. Richard might find a way to retaliate. And Madison. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Can't believe I defended you about the money thing. Madison showed me the screenshots. Screenshots? What screenshots? Before I could respond, another text popped up from my study group partner Emma, really disappointed. Thought you were better than this. Then another from my lab partner, Professor Chen wants to see me about our project. Thanks a lot. My hands were shaking as I called Jake. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice cold. What do you want? What screenshots are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Madison showed us your Venmo history. The $50 you took from the birthday fund shows right there in your transactions. Same day, same amount. My blood turned to ice. Jake, I never took any money from you. I don't even know how she could have screenshots of my Venmo. It's literally your profile picture and your username. Look, I don't want to hear excuses anymore. The line went dead. I immediately opened my Venmo app, hands trembling as I scrolled through my transaction history. Nothing. No $50 withdrawal on Jake's birthday. No suspicious activity at all. But someone with basic Photoshop skills could fake screenshots in minutes. Someone with access to my profile information from group hangouts. Someone who knew exactly how much money had gone missing and when. Madison hadn't just lied about me. She'd manufactured evidence. I looked down at the photos on my phone again. Richard's construction fraud wasn't just my nuclear option anymore. It was justice. The evidence was even worse than I'd initially thought. After Jake hung up on me, I spent the entire night going through every photo, every overheard conversation, every casual dinner where Richard had taken business calls. What I found made my stomach turn. It wasn't just the Morrison Elementary project. Richard's company had been systematically cutting corners for years, and he'd been sloppy about discussing it around family. There was the community center renovation where they'd used untreated lumber for load-bearing beams. The senior living facility where they'd installed substandard electrical wiring. The public library expansion where they'd forgotten to include proper waterproofing in their costs but billed the city for premium materials anyway. I'd captured invoice numbers, supplier names, project codes, all because I'd been mindlessly taking photos during those endless family dinners while Richard conducted business like we weren't even there. But as I stared at my laptop screen at 3 a.m., compiling everything into a folder, reality hit me like a freight train. If I went through with this, I wouldn't just be destroying Richard's business. I'd be potentially putting people in danger who were living and working in those compromised buildings. Kids at that elementary school. Elderly residents in that facility. How long had this been going on? How many people were at risk because Richard Morrison valued profit margins over safety codes? My phone buzzed. A text from Madison. Heard about your study group situation. Maybe try being honest for once. People might start trusting you again. Face blowing a kiss. The casual cruelty of that emoji made my vision blur with rage. She was enjoying this. She was actively monitoring the destruction of my life and savoring every update. I screenshotted her message and added it to my folder. Then I started typing a response, deleted it, typed another one, deleted that too. Nothing I could say would matter. Madison had already won the narrative war, and she knew it. But there was something else bothering me, something that had been nagging at the edge of my mind since the Venmo revelation. How had Madison gotten detailed enough information about my account to fake those screenshots convincingly? My profile was private, and while we'd hung out in groups, I'd never given her my login information. Unless. I opened my laptop and checked my email, scrolling back through months of notifications. There, buried in my spam folder from 6 weeks ago, was a suspicious email that looked like it came from Venmo asking me to verify my account information. I'd ignored it completely, but what if Madison had somehow intercepted it? What if she'd been planning this character assassination for longer than I thought? The idea that this was premeditated, that Madison had been systematically gathering information to destroy me, made everything so much worse. This wasn't jealousy or sibling rivalry. This was calculated psychological warfare. I pulled up the contact information for the city's building inspection department and stared at the phone number. One call would set everything in motion. An investigation into Richard's business practices, potential criminal charges, financial ruin for my stepfamily. But people were potentially in danger because of those substandard materials. And Madison needed to learn that actions had consequences. My finger hovered over the dial button when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my dorm room. Probably just someone coming back from a late night out, but it reminded me how isolated I'd become. 3 weeks ago, those footsteps might have belonged to friends coming to hang out. Now, I couldn't trust anyone in my social circle. Madison had made sure of that. I saved the inspector's number to my contacts and closed my laptop. Tomorrow, I'd make the call. Tonight, I needed to prepare for war. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Mom. My heart hammered as I listened to the voicemails. The first few were typical mom worry. Honey, call me back, we need to talk about this situation with Madison. But by voicemail number 12, her tone had shifted to something I'd never heard before, raw panic. Your stepfather got a call from the college. They're saying you might be expelled. And now Madison is saying you threatened her last night. What is going on? Threatened her. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my messages. Nothing sent to Madison after her smug emoji text. I checked my call log, my social media, everything. I hadn't contacted her at all. But sure enough, when I finally called Mom back, the story was already set in stone. Madison came home crying last night, Mom said before I could even say hello. She said you cornered her on campus and told her you were going to make her pay for ruining your life. Richard is talking about getting a restraining order. Mom, I never. She has witnesses, honey. Other students who saw you yelling at her. I closed my eyes, remembering yesterday's hallway confrontation outside Professor Chen's office. Students had definitely been staring when I raised my voice. It would be so easy for Madison to spin my frustrated questions into threats, especially if she got to the witnesses first. I want you to come home this weekend, Mom continued. We're going to sit down as a family and work this out before it gets any worse. Any worse. Like my life wasn't already in complete ruins. After hanging up, I sat on my dorm bed staring at the inspector's number in my contacts. But something was nagging at me about the timeline. If Richard was already talking about restraining orders, that meant Madison had escalated this to DEFCON 1 overnight. Why the sudden urgency? I opened my laptop and Googled Morrison and Associates Construction. Richard's company website looked professional and legitimate, full of glossy photos of completed projects and testimonials from satisfied clients. But when I scrolled down to recent news, my blood went cold. There was a press release from yesterday, announcing that Morrison and Associates had just been awarded the contract for the new university student housing complex. The same university I attended. A $20 million project that would house over 500 students. The timeline clicked into place. Madison's sudden escalation wasn't just about sibling rivalry. It was about protecting her father's biggest contract yet. If any investigation into Richard's business practices surfaced now, it could kill the university deal before construction even began. She wasn't just trying to destroy my reputation anymore. She was trying to completely discredit me before I could become a threat to her family's financial future. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging or this gets worse. You have no idea what you're messing with. I screenshotted it immediately, hands shaking. Madison was monitoring me somehow, or having someone else do it. The anonymous threat felt like confirmation that I was onto something bigger than I'd realized. But it also meant I was running out of time. If Madison was this desperate to silence me, she was probably already working on her next move. More fake evidence. More lies to turn my remaining friends against me. Or something worse. I pulled up the inspector's contact information again, but this time I also opened the university's ethics reporting website. If Richard's company was going to build student housing with the same corner-cutting practices they'd used on the elementary school, I couldn't just report it to the city. I needed to report it to everyone. My finger hovered over the keyboard as I started typing my first email. There was no going back after this. I was halfway through typing my email to the city inspector when my dorm room door flew open. Jesus Christ, you scared me too, I started, but the words died in my throat when I saw who was standing there. Richard filled the doorway, his usually neat appearance disheveled, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. Behind him stood Madison, her eyes red and puffy like she'd been crying, though I could see the calculating gleam underneath the tears. We need to talk, Richard said, stepping into my room without invitation. Now. My laptop was still open, the inspector's website visible on the screen. I casually moved my hand toward the trackpad to close it, but Richard's eyes were already locked on the display. Building Inspection Department. His voice was dangerously quiet. Interesting reading material. Madison stepped around him, and I noticed she was recording with her phone. I told you she was planning something crazy. Look how guilty she looks. Turn that off, I snapped, but Richard held up a hand. No, let her record. I want documentation of this conversation. He moved closer to my desk, his eyes scanning my open browser tabs. You know, most students research internships or job applications online. Not city inspection protocols. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. I don't know what you're implying, but... I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Richard picked up the folder I'd left on my desk, the one containing all my photos and notes about his business. Fact 1, you've been taking pictures of confidential business documents in my home. Fact 2, you've been researching how to file complaints against construction companies. Fact 3, you just threatened my daughter yesterday. I never threatened anyone. Multiple witnesses disagree. Madison's voice was steady now, the fake tears completely gone. And now we find evidence that you're planning to file false reports against my dad's business. This is harassment. This is stalking. Richard was flipping through my printed photos, his jaw tightening with each page. These invoices are from my private office. Taking photos of someone's private business documents could be considered industrial espionage. The words hit me like a slap. Industrial espionage? Those are just random pictures from family dinner. I was. You were what? Accidentally photographing specific invoice numbers and supplier contracts. He held up one of the photos, pointing to the Morrison Elementary paperwork. This angle, this focus, this was deliberate documentation. My mouth went dry. When I'd been taking those pictures, I'd been angry and bored, mindlessly capturing evidence of what I'd overheard. But looking at them now through Richard's eyes, they did look intentional. Professional, even. Madison told us you've been acting erratically for weeks, Richard continued. The stealing, the academic dishonesty, now this obsession with destroying my business. We're concerned about your mental state. My mental state. The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. Madison is the one who's been systematically lying about me. Prove it. Madison stepped closer, still recording. Show me one piece of evidence that I've lied about anything. She was right, and we all knew it. Every lie she told had been carefully crafted to be unprovable. The Venmo screenshots that were probably fake but looked real. The academic dishonesty that was circumstantial but damning. The threats that were really just my frustrated questions taken out of context. But I had proof of Richard's business practices. Real, documented evidence of fraud and safety violations. That had to count for something. The Morrison Elementary project, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Grade 40 rebar instead of grade 60. I heard you on the phone, and I have the invoices that prove. Richard's laugh was cold. You have photos you took without permission of documents you don't understand. Rebar specifications change during construction all the time based on engineering assessments. Everything we do is approved by the appropriate authorities. He was lying. I knew he was lying. But standing there in my dorm room with both of them staring me down, their version of events sounded so much more reasonable than mine. Here's what's going to happen, Richard said, closing my laptop with a sharp snap. You're going to delete these photos, stop this harassment campaign, and get the psychological help you clearly need. Or we're going to the police with evidence of stalking, industrial espionage, and criminal threats. Madison's phone was still recording, capturing every word of what sounded like a reasonable father protecting his family from an unstable girl. I was trapped, and they knew it. But as I watched Richard's smug expression, something clicked into place. He was scared. They both were. Otherwise, why would they have driven all the way to campus to confront me in person? Why the intimidation tactics and legal threats? You're right, I said quietly, reaching for my laptop. I should delete these photos. Madison's shoulders relaxed slightly, and I saw her finger move toward the stop recording button. That's when I made my move. Instead of opening the photo folder, I quickly pulled up my email drafts. The message to the city inspector was still there, along with the ones I'd started writing to the Better Business Bureau and the university's ethics board. My finger hovered over the send button. Actually, you know what? I think I'll keep them. Richard lunged for the laptop, but I was faster. I slammed it shut and clutched it to my chest, backing toward my dorm room's emergency fire alarm. Those photos don't belong to you, Richard growled. You're stealing proprietary business information. And you're stealing from the city, I shot back. How much money have you pocketed by using substandard materials? How much have you saved by skipping safety protocols? Madison stepped between us, her phone still recording. See? This is exactly the kind of unhinged behavior we're talking about. You're having paranoid delusions about my dad's perfectly legitimate business. Paranoid delusions? I laughed, and even I could hear the edge of hysteria in my voice. Madison, you literally faked evidence to get me fired and nearly expelled. You've been planning this for weeks, maybe months. And now you're covering for your dad's illegal construction practices. Alleged illegal practices, Richard corrected. Which you can't prove because they don't exist. Then you won't mind when the inspectors take a closer look at the Morrison Elementary Foundation, will you? I challenged. Or the senior living facility with the substandard electrical work. I'm sure everything will check out perfectly. The color drained from Richard's face. You don't know what you're talking about. Those projects passed all required inspections. Because you hid the evidence from the inspectors, I pressed. I heard you on the phone, Richard. Just show him the standard specs if he asks. Remember that conversation? Madison's recording hand was shaking now. Dad, she's clearly having some kind of breakdown. We should call campus security. But Richard wasn't looking at Madison anymore. He was staring at me with the kind of cold calculation I'd only seen in Madison's eyes before this moment. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into, girl. My business supports dozens of families in this city. You want to destroy all those jobs over some teenage vendetta? I want to stop you from putting people in danger, I said. Kids at that elementary school, elderly people in that facility, they deserve buildings that won't collapse on them. Nothing is going to collapse. You're being dramatic. Then why are you so worried about me reporting it? The silence stretched between us, heavy with threat and desperation. I could see Richard calculating his options, weighing how much damage I could actually do versus how much trouble he'd get in for intimidating me further. Madison broke the standoff. Fine. You want to play this game? Let's play. She stopped recording and started typing something on her phone. I wonder what Mom would think if she knew you were having psychotic episodes. Threatening family members, stealing private documents, making up elaborate conspiracy theories. My blood ran cold. You wouldn't. I already am. She held up her phone, showing me the text she was composing to my mother. Emergency. Need you to come to campus immediately. Situation with OP much worse than we thought. Richard smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen. Your move, stepdaughter. The text whooshed away from Madison's phone before I could stop her. I watched my mother's contact name disappear from the screen, carrying with it what was probably the final nail in the coffin of my credibility. There, Madison said sweetly. Mom will be here in 2 hours. Just enough time for us to have a nice long conversation about your recent episodes. My laptop felt like dead weight in my arms. Everything I'd worked to compile, all the evidence I'd gathered, suddenly seemed pathetically small against the wall they were building around me. But something Madison had said was nagging at me. How did you get into my dorm? I asked suddenly. The doors are keycard access only. Richard and Madison exchanged a glance. Your RA let us in, Richard said smoothly. We explained we were concerned family members. Which RA? Another pause. I don't see how that's relevant. But it was relevant, because I knew my RA wouldn't have let anyone into my room without calling me first. It was literally against university policy. And if they'd lied about how they got in, what else were they lying about? You picked my lock, I realized. Or used a master key. That's breaking and entering. Madison rolled her eyes. You're being paranoid again. Dad already told you. No, think about this, I interrupted, my mind racing. You drove 2 hours to campus, somehow got into my locked dorm room, and confronted me about research I was doing privately on my own laptop. The only way you could have known what I was looking into is if you've been monitoring my internet activity. Richard's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That's ridiculous. Is it? Madison somehow got access to my Venmo information to fake those screenshots. She's been timing her attacks perfectly to coincide with my academic schedule, like she knows exactly when my exams and assignments are due. And now you show up minutes after I start researching building inspectors. I was thinking out loud now, puzzle pieces clicking together in real time. You've been tracking my laptop. Some kind of monitoring software. You sound completely unhinged, Madison said, but her voice was too high, too defensive. When did you install it? I pressed. During one of those family dinners when I left my laptop in the guest room? Or earlier, when you had access to my stuff during the move? Richard stepped closer, his pretense of paternal concern finally dropping completely. You need to stop this right now. Delete those photos, forget whatever conspiracy theory you think you've uncovered, and focus on getting your life back together. Or what? Or we'll make sure the university knows exactly what kind of person they're dealing with, Madison said. Theft, academic dishonesty, harassment, stalking, industrial espionage. How many violations do you think it takes before they expel you permanently? The threat hung in the air like a blade. They had me cornered, and we all knew it. Even if I managed to send my emails to the inspectors, who would believe a disgraced college student over a respected local businessman? Especially when that student had a documented history of erratic behavior and false accusations. But then my phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID made my heart skip, Jake. Madison must have seen my expression change because she lunged for my phone, but I was already answering. Jake. My voice cracked with desperate hope. Don't hang up, he said quickly. I know you're probably done with all of us, but Emma found something you need to know about those Venmo screenshots. Can you meet us at the library? I looked up at Richard and Madison, who were both staring at me with undisguised panic. Actually, I said loudly enough for them to hear every word, why don't you come to my dorm instead? Room 247. And bring Emma. I think there are some people here you should meet. The 15 minutes it took for Jake and Emma to reach my dorm felt like hours. Richard had positioned himself between me and the door while Madison paced by the window, frantically texting someone. I clutched my laptop like a shield, acutely aware that everything depended on what Jake had discovered about those Venmo screenshots. We should leave, Madison said for the third time. This is getting out of hand. No. Richard's voice was steel. We finish this now. When the knock finally came, I practically lunged for the door. Jake and Emma stood in the hallway, both looking confused and concerned. Behind them, I was surprised to see Marcus Chen, not Professor Chen, but his older brother who worked in the university's IT department. What's going on? Jake asked, then stopped short when he saw Richard and Madison. Oh. Hey Madison. Jake. Madison's demeanor instantly shifted back to sweet and innocent. What are you doing here? I thought you weren't speaking to her anymore. Emma stepped forward, holding her laptop. We weren't. But then I got curious about those screenshots you showed us. Something felt off about the formatting. My heart started pounding. What did you find? Marcus spoke up. Mind if we come in? This is kind of technical, and I think everyone should hear this. Richard moved to block the doorway. I think there are enough people involved in this family matter already. Family matter? Jake's eyebrows shot up. Madison said this was about stolen money and academic dishonesty. That affects all of us. It affects all of you because Madison has been lying, I said desperately. About everything. The money, the cheating allegations, all of it. Madison's laugh was perfectly calibrated, just the right mix of hurt and disbelief. See what I mean? She's completely convinced herself that I'm somehow orchestrating this elaborate conspiracy. It's actually kind of scary. But Emma was already opening her laptop. Here's the thing about digital forensics, she said, angling the screen so everyone could see. When you screenshot a real transaction, the metadata includes timestamp information, device identifiers, even screen resolution data. She pulled up a detailed analysis that looked way over my head. The screenshots Madison showed us. They have the right visual elements, but the metadata is all wrong. The timestamps don't match Venmo's server logs, the device information is inconsistent, and look at this. She zoomed in on one corner of the screenshot. See this pixel distortion pattern? That's classic Photoshop artifacting. Someone copied OP's profile picture and transaction layout, then digitally edited in fake transaction details. The room went completely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat. Madison's face cycled through several emotions before settling on wounded innocence. That's impossible. I screenshotted those directly from her account when she showed me her phone. When did I show you my phone? I demanded. At Jake's birthday party, remember? You were bragging about some payment you'd received. I wasn't even at Jake's birthday party. The words exploded out of me. I was working that night, remember? You guys went without me because I couldn't get the shift covered. Jake's face was changing as the memory clicked into place. Oh shit. She's right. OP wasn't there. Madison, you said she was acting weird at the party, but she wasn't actually there. Marcus cleared his throat. There's something else. Emma asked me to check the university's network logs for any suspicious activity on student accounts. He pulled out his tablet. OP, someone's been accessing your student portal from an external IP address for the past 6 weeks. Same IP that's been flagging our security systems for unusual data scraping behavior. Richard finally spoke. This is ridiculous. You're all enabling her delusions. The IP traces back to Morrison and Associates office network, Marcus continued calmly. Same network that's been sending automated queries to the university's contract bidding database. The blood drained from Madison's face. That doesn't prove anything. Lots of people could have access to. Actually, it proves quite a lot, Emma interrupted, pulling up another window. Because whoever was monitoring OP's accounts got sloppy. They left digital fingerprints all over her browsing history, her email metadata, even her location data. We can trace exactly when the surveillance started and what information was accessed. She turned the laptop toward Richard. Including the fact that someone from your company's network was tracking her research into building inspection procedures. In real time. Today. The silence stretched until it became suffocating. Richard's mask of concerned stepfather was completely gone now, replaced by something cold and calculating. Madison looked like she was about to throw up. So, Jake said slowly, Madison didn't just lie about the money. She's been, what, stalking OP's online activity? 4 weeks. Months, Marcus corrected grimly. This level of surveillance isn't accidental. Someone put serious effort into this. I found my voice. They were protecting Richard's business. The new university contract, the corner cutting, all of it. I looked directly at Madison. You weren't just jealous of me. You were afraid I'd accidentally expose your father's fraud. Madison opened her mouth to deny it, but Richard cut her off. Prove it, he said simply. Prove any of it. That's when I smiled and opened my laptop. Actually, I can. The look on Richard's face when I opened my laptop and pulled up my email drafts was almost worth everything I'd been through. Almost. You see, I said, angling the screen so everyone could see the 3 emails I prepared. I wasn't just randomly taking photos at family dinners. I was documenting a pattern of fraud that's been going on for years. I clicked on the first email, the one addressed to the city's building inspection department. Morrison Elementary School Foundation. Grade 40 rebar substituted for grade 60, saving approximately $15,000 while compromising structural integrity. Richard's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Riverside Senior Living Facility, I continued, opening the second email. Substandard electrical wiring installed despite billing the city for premium materials. I have invoice numbers, supplier confirmations, and audio recordings of Richard discussing how to hide the discrepancies from inspectors. Audio recordings. Marcus raised an eyebrow. I pulled out my phone. I started recording family dinners after I noticed how freely Richard discussed business. Amazing what people will say when they think you're just a quiet stepdaughter scrolling through social media. Madison finally found her voice. You can't record people without their permission. That's illegal. Actually, Virginia is a one-party consent state, Marcus said mildly. As long as one person in the conversation consents to recording, in this case, OP, it's completely legal. Emma leaned forward, studying my screen. What's the third email? I hesitated, then clicked on the draft addressed to the university's administration and the local news outlets. The new student housing contract. $20 million for a project that Richard's planning to execute using the same cost-cutting measures that compromised the elementary school and senior facility. The room went dead silent. Jake's face had gone white. "You're talking about the new dorms," he said slowly. "The ones they're breaking ground on next month. Where half the campus is supposed to live next year." "Where we're supposed to live," Emma added, her voice barely a whisper. Richard stepped forward, his pretense of civility completely abandoned. "Those are private business communications taken out of context by someone with no understanding of construction industry standards." "Then you won't mind when the inspectors review your compliance records," I shot back. "I'm sure everything will check out." "You have no idea what you're playing with," Richard growled. "My business employs 60 people. Those jobs support families, mortgages, college tuitions. You want to destroy all of that because you're angry about some teenage drama. I want to stop you from putting people in danger." My voice cracked with emotion. "Do you know what happens when a building's foundation fails? When electrical systems aren't up to code? People die, Richard. And you've been gambling with their lives for profit." Madison stepped between us. "Dad, maybe we should just go. This is getting way too intense." But Richard wasn't backing down. "No. We're going to settle this right here, right now." He turned to Jake and Emma. "You two need to understand something. This girl has been spiraling for months. Academic problems, theft allegations, now these paranoid conspiracy theories about my business. She's clearly having some kind of breakdown. I watched him work, saw how he was trying to plant seeds of doubt even in the face of overwhelming evidence. And for a horrible moment, I could see it working." Jake's expression was uncertain, Emma looked confused. Then Marcus spoke up. "Actually, Mr. Morrison, I think there's something else you should know." He pulled up a new window on his tablet. "The university takes fraud allegations very seriously, especially when they involve active contracts. I'm required to report this conversation to the administration within 24 hours. Richard's face went ashen. "Required? Standard protocol. When potential safety violations are reported involving university projects, we have to investigate." Marcus's tone was perfectly professional, but I could see the steel underneath. "The student housing contract will be suspended pending a full audit of Morrison and Associates' compliance history." "You can't do that," Madison said desperately. "You can't destroy someone's business based on accusations from a girl who's clearly having mental health issues." "We're not destroying anything," Marcus replied calmly. "We're ensuring student safety. If Mr. Morrison's business practices are legitimate, the audit will confirm that." I watched Richard's face cycle through rage, panic, and cold calculation. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. "You have no idea what you've just started, girl. No idea at all." The threat hung in the air like poison, but for the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid. Because I wasn't alone anymore. The threat in Richard's voice should have terrified me, but instead I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks, clarity. I wasn't a helpless victim anymore. "Actually, Richard," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded, "I think you're the one who doesn't understand what just started." I turned to Marcus. "How long does a university audit typically take? For a contract this size?" 6 to 8 weeks minimum," he replied, already typing notes into his tablet. "And given the scope of the allegations, we'll need to bring in external investigators. The State Engineering Board, probably the FBI's Construction Fraud Division." Madison made a strangled noise. "The FBI. $20 million in federal education funding," Marcus explained matter-of-factly. "Cross that threshold with potential fraud, and it becomes a federal case automatically." Richard's composure finally cracked completely. "You self-righteous little bitch," he snarled at me. "You think you're some kind of hero? You just destroyed dozens of families over your petty revenge fantasy." "Dad." Madison grabbed his arm, her eyes darting toward Marcus's tablet, which was clearly still recording. But Richard was beyond caring about optics now. 2 years, he continued, his voice rising. 2 years I've welcomed you into my home, treated you like my own daughter, and this is how you repay me. By manufacturing evidence to destroy everything I've built. Manufacturing evidence. Emma stood up, her laptop still displaying the metadata analysis. "We literally just proved that Madison manufactured evidence against OP." "That's different," Madison snapped. "I was trying to protect my family from someone who was obviously planning something vindictive." Jake stared at her. "So you admit you faked the Venmo screenshots?" The question hung in the air like a trap. Madison's mouth opened and closed soundlessly as she realized what she'd just confessed to. That's not what I meant." "You literally just said you manufactured evidence to protect your family," Marcus observed, his fingers flying across his tablet screen. "That's admission to fraud, identity theft, and harassment. Should I add those to my report?" Richard stepped toward Marcus, his bulk intimidating in the small dorm room. "You need to stop this right now. Delete whatever you're typing and walk away. This is a private family matter." "Actually, it stopped being private the moment you mentioned the university contract," Marcus replied without looking up. "And the moment your daughter admitted to creating fraudulent financial documents. That's a criminal matter now." I could see Richard calculating, weighing his options. His eyes darted between Marcus's tablet and my laptop, like he was considering whether he could destroy both devices before anyone could stop him. That's when my phone rang. The caller ID made my stomach drop. "Mom." "Don't answer that," Richard commanded. But I was already swiping to accept. "Hi, Mom. Honey, I'm in the parking lot." Madison's text sounded urgent. "What floor are you on?" I looked around the room, at Richard's barely contained rage, at Madison's tear-streaked panic, at Jake and Emma's shocked faces, at Marcus calmly documenting everything for his official report. "Third floor," I said. "And Mom, you might want to bring campus security with you." "What? Why would I need?" Richard lunged for my phone, but Jake intercepted him. "Whoa, hey, back off." The scuffle was brief but loud enough that Mom definitely heard it through the phone. "What's happening up there?" Her voice was sharp with alarm. "Just bring security, Mom," I said quickly before ending the call. Richard straightened his shirt, his face flushed with anger and something that looked like fear. You have no idea what you've just done to your own family. They're not my family, I replied, and the words felt like breaking free from chains I didn't know I'd been wearing. Family doesn't destroy each other for profit. Madison was crying now, real tears this time. The university contract was supposed to pay for my graduate school, she whispered. Dad promised if this deal went through, I wouldn't have student loans. And there it was. The real reason behind everything. Not just jealousy or sibling rivalry, but money. Madison had systematically destroyed my life to protect her father's biggest payday, which would have funded her future. So you decided to destroy mine instead, I said softly. The sound of heavy footsteps in the hallway cut through the tension. Mom's voice carried through the door, along with what sounded like a security radio crackling. Richard looked around the room one last time, his gaze lingering on my laptop screen where those 3 damning emails were still visible. This isn't over, he said quietly. Not even close. The campus security officers who entered with Mom looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Family disputes weren't exactly their specialty, but the radio chatter from Marcus about potential federal fraud had apparently elevated this beyond a typical dorm room drama. Ma'am, the older officer addressed Mom, we received reports of a disturbance and possible criminal activity. Mom looked around the crowded room in bewilderment. Criminal activity. I thought this was about Madison and my daughter having problems at school. It was never just about school, I said, gesturing toward my laptop screen. Mom, Richard's company has been defrauding the city for years. And Madison has been covering it up by systematically destroying my reputation. That's preposterous, Richard interjected smoothly, his businessman persona sliding back into place now that authority figures were present. Officers, my stepdaughter has been experiencing some serious mental health issues. Paranoid delusions, theft, academic dishonesty. We came here today hoping to get her some help. I watched Mom's face as Richard spoke, saw the seeds of doubt he was planting take root. She'd been hearing about my problems for weeks from both him and Madison. To her, his explanation probably sounded reasonable. But Marcus stepped forward with his tablet. Actually, officers, I'm Marcus Chen from University IT. We've documented extensive evidence of digital harassment, identity theft, and surveillance targeting this student. Additionally, there are credible allegations of construction fraud involving active university contracts. The younger security officer perked up. Construction fraud? That's way above our pay grade. Which is why I've already contacted the State Inspector General's office, Marcus continued. They should be here within the hour. Madison grabbed Richard's arm. Dad, maybe we should call our lawyer. The words hung in the air like a confession. Mom's eyes widened as the implications hit her. Lawyer, she repeated slowly. Why would you need a lawyer for a family disagreement? Richard shot Madison a murderous look, but the damage was done. Even the security officers were now paying closer attention. Mrs. Morrison, the older officer said to Mom, we're going to need everyone to stay here until the state investigators arrive. This situation appears to be more complex than initially reported. That's when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Text after text, all from numbers I didn't recognize. I glanced at the screen and felt my blood turn to ice. Stop snitching or you'll regret it. Mind your own business. Accidents happen to troublemakers. Emma saw my face and grabbed my phone. Oh my God. Marcus, look at this. As Marcus examined the threatening messages, more kept arriving. Someone was orchestrating a harassment campaign in real time, and they clearly knew exactly what was happening in this room. Richard, I said slowly, who else knew you were coming here today? I don't know what you're implying. Dad called Marcus Hendricks on the way here, Madison said suddenly, her voice barely a whisper. And Tony Vasquez. He told them there might be problems with the university contract. Richard's face went white. Madison, shut up. But she was in full panic mode now. They said they'd handle it if things got out of control. I thought they just meant they'd talk to people, but these messages. She stared at my phone in horror. Marcus was already calling someone, his voice urgent. We need campus police here immediately. And contact the FBI field office. This just became witness intimidation. The older security officer stepped closer to Richard. Sir, I'm going to need you to remain calm and stay exactly where you are. Richard's mask finally slipped completely. You have no idea what you're dealing with. My business partners don't appreciate interference. Are you threatening these students? The officer asked sharply. I'm stating facts. Sometimes construction sites can be dangerous places. Accidents happen. The room fell silent except for the sound of my phone continuing to buzz with new threatening messages. I realized with growing horror that this wasn't just about Richard's fraud anymore. We'd stumbled into something much bigger, and much more dangerous. The next hour passed in a blur of officials, phone calls, and revelations that kept getting worse. The state investigator who arrived was a sharp-eyed woman named Detective Sarah Reeves, and she took one look at the threatening messages on my phone before immediately calling for backup. Mr. Morrison, she said, settling into the chair Marcus had vacated, I need you to explain your relationship with Marcus Hendricks and Tony Vasquez. Richard's lawyer had arrived 20 minutes earlier, a slick-looking man who kept telling Richard not to answer questions. But Richard seemed beyond listening to legal advice at this point. They're business partners, he said through gritted teeth. We've worked together on several projects. Including projects where corners were cut. Detective Reeves asked mildly, flipping through the printed photos I'd provided. Because Mr. Hendricks' company supplied the substandard electrical work for the Riverside Senior Living Facility, and Mr. Vasquez's concrete company handled the Morrison Elementary Foundation. The lawyer leaned forward sharply. My client won't be answering any more questions without. Actually, your client already answered plenty, Detective Reeves interrupted. Including making what could be interpreted as threats against witnesses in front of multiple people and a recording device. She gestured toward Marcus's tablet, which had been documenting everything. But what's more interesting are these text messages. The phone numbers trace back to burner devices, but the timing is fascinating. Someone started sending threats to Miss OP within minutes of Mr. Morrison making those phone calls from his car. Madison was huddled in the corner, looking like she wanted to disappear entirely. I didn't know they would do this, she whispered. Dad said Marcus and Tony were just backup contractors. I didn't know they were. Were what? Detective Reeves prompted gently. The kind of people who threaten college students, Madison finished miserably. Mom, who had been silent through most of this, finally spoke up. Richard, what kind of business are you really running? The question hung in the air like an accusation. I watched Richard's face cycle through emotions, anger, desperation, something that might have been genuine regret. It started small, he said finally, ignoring his lawyer's frantic gestures. Just minor substitutions to stay competitive. Everyone does it. But then Hendricks and Vasquez wanted bigger cuts, more corners cut. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd make sure I never got another city contract. So you were being extorted? Detective Reeves asked. We all were. The whole system is corrupt. You can't get municipal contracts in this city without paying their fees, using their suppliers, following their rules. Jake, who had been quietly taking notes this entire time, looked up sharply. Wait. Are you saying there's like, an entire network of people doing this? Detective Reeves nodded grimly. We've been investigating corruption in municipal contracting for 18 months. What your friend stumbled onto isn't just one company cutting corners, it's a coordinated effort to defraud multiple city projects. The implications hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't just exposed Richard's business practices. I'd accidentally uncovered what sounded like organized crime. My phone buzzed again, and this time the message made my blood freeze. We know where you live when school isn't in session. 425, Maple Street. Nice house. Shame if something happened to it. That was my mom's address. They were threatening my family home. Detective, I said, my voice shaking as I showed her the latest message, they know where my mom lives. Detective Reeves took one look at the text and immediately got on her radio. I need units dispatched to 425, Maple Street for protective surveillance. Possible threats against a witness's family. Mom grabbed my hand, her face pale with fear. What have we gotten ourselves into? Looking around the crowded dorm room, at the detective coordinating protection details, at Richard staring at his hands in defeat, at Madison crying silently in the corner, at my friends who'd risked their own safety to help me prove the truth, I realized this was far from over. We'd opened a door that couldn't be closed, and now we had to see where it led. The next morning brought news that made everything infinitely worse. Detective Reeves called at 6 a.m., her voice tight with urgency. OP, we need you to come to the station immediately. Bring your mother. What happened? I asked, though part of me already knew I didn't want to hear the answer. Marcus Hendricks was arrested at 3 a.m. trying to break into the university's IT department. He had equipment designed to wipe servers remotely. My stomach dropped. The evidence Marcus collected would have been destroyed if campus security hadn't been doing extra rounds because of yesterday's threats. But here's the problem, we think he was just a distraction. I sat up in my dorm bed, suddenly wide awake. Distraction from what? Someone broke into the city planning office last night. Specifically, they hit the filing cabinets containing inspection records for Morrison Elementary and Riverside Senior Living. 30 years of safety documentation, gone. The methodical destruction of evidence meant this conspiracy went deeper than any of us had realized. They weren't just trying to intimidate me anymore, they were systematically eliminating proof of their crimes. Detective, what about the photos on my laptop? The recordings? Still intact, but now they're the only physical evidence we have. Which makes you. She paused, and I could hear the weight of what she wasn't saying. Which makes me a target, I finished. 2 hours later, I was sitting in an FBI field office with Mom, Detective Reeves, and Special Agent Catherine Walsh, who looked like she hadn't slept in days. The room smelled like stale coffee and institutional disinfectant. Miss OP, Agent Walsh began, spreading photos across the table. Your evidence has helped us identify what appears to be a municipal corruption ring that's been operating for at least 5 years. Fraudulent contracts totaling over $40 million. She pointed to surveillance photos of men I didn't recognize. But Tony Vasquez disappeared sometime last night. His construction yard has been cleared out, and his office computers were remotely wiped. Someone warned him. Mom gripped my hand tighter. What does that mean for my daughter? It means she's the key witness in a federal case that's unraveling fast, Agent Walsh replied bluntly. And the remaining conspirators know it. A knock on the conference room door interrupted us. Agent Walsh stepped outside briefly, then returned with Marcus Chen, who looked exhausted but determined. I've been working with the FBI's cybercrime unit all night, he announced, opening his laptop. The surveillance software on OP's devices. It wasn't just monitoring her internet activity. It was recording keystrokes, tracking location data, even accessing her camera and microphone. The violation of privacy was so complete it made me feel sick. For how long? Based on the log files I recovered. Since the day after your parents' wedding announcement, Marcus said grimly. Madison and Richard have been watching you for almost 2 years. Agent Walsh leaned forward. Why would they start surveillance that early? You weren't a threat to their business then. Because they were planning the university contract bid from the beginning, I realized, pieces clicking together in my head. Richard knew he'd need to keep me quiet if I ever discovered their practices. The surveillance was insurance. Mom's face had gone ashen. You're saying they've been planning to destroy my daughter's life since before we even got married? The conference room door burst open again, and a breathless junior agent rushed in. Agent Walsh, we have a problem. Richard Morrison posted bail an hour ago. That's impossible, Detective Reeves snapped. His bail was set at $2 million. Someone paid it. Cash. And here's the kicker, Madison Morrison never made it back to her dorm last night. Campus security has no record of her leaving the building with her father, but she's not in her room. The implications hit me like a freight train. Richard was free, Madison was missing, and Tony Vasquez had vanished with advance warning. Either Madison had run, or someone had taken her to ensure her silence. Agent Walsh, I said quietly, I think I know where Madison might be. Everyone turned to look at me. Richard's construction company has a private office at the old Riverside warehouse. I've seen invoices with that address. If they're trying to destroy evidence or coordinate their next move. I swallowed hard. That's where they'd go. Agent Walsh was already reaching for her radio. How many people know about this location? Just family. And business partners. Then we're walking into either a rescue operation or a trap, she said grimly. Possibly both. The FBI tactical team assembled outside the Riverside warehouse looked like something out of a movie, all black gear and serious faces. Agent Walsh had wanted to keep me back at the field office, but I'd convinced her that I was the only one who knew the warehouse layout from Richard's business calls I'd overheard. The main office is on the second floor, northeast corner, I whispered to the team leader as we crouched behind their armored vehicle. There's a separate entrance through the loading dock that Richard uses when he doesn't want to be seen. Agent Walsh checked her earpiece. Thermal imaging shows at least 4 heat signatures on the second floor. 2 stationary, 2 moving. My heart hammered against my ribs. If Madison was in there, was she a hostage or a willing participant? After everything she'd done to me, I should have wanted her to face consequences. But the thought of her being hurt by the same criminals she'd helped protect made me sick. There's something else, I said suddenly, remembering a detail from one of Richard's late-night phone calls. The warehouse has a basement level. Richard mentioned storing sensitive materials down there. If they're destroying evidence. Agent Walsh cursed under her breath and relayed the information to her team. We need to move now before they finish whatever they're doing. The next 20 minutes felt like hours. I sat in the back of the surveillance van with Marcus, watching multiple screens showing feeds from the tactical team's cameras. The warehouse was a maze of construction equipment, supply pallets, and temporary office spaces. Movement on the second floor, came a voice through the radio. 2 subjects in the main office. One appears to be restrained. My stomach lurched. Is it Madison? Agent Walsh held up a hand for silence as the team leader's voice continued, confirming one female subject, blonde hair, appears to be zip-tied to a chair. One male subject pacing, armed with what looks like a crowbar. That's not Richard, I said immediately. Richard doesn't pace. He's more of a loomer. Then who? Agent Walsh started, but another voice cut through the radio. Basement team reporting. Holy shit. Agent Walsh, you need to see this. The camera feed from the basement team made my blood run cold. Boxes and boxes of documents were scattered across concrete floors, some already reduced to ashes in metal trash cans. But what made it worse were the stacks of cash and what looked like weapons laid out on a folding table. This isn't just corruption, Marcus said quietly. This is organized crime. Agent Walsh was coordinating multiple teams now, her voice sharp with urgency. Second floor team, can you identify the male subject with the hostage? Negative ID, but he's on the phone with someone. Audio quality is poor but we're catching fragments. Something about loose ends and making sure she can't testify. The words hit me like ice water. They weren't just trying to intimidate Madison into silence. They were planning to eliminate her as a witness. Agent Walsh, they're going to kill her, I said desperately. We don't know that. Yes, we do. I grabbed the radio from her hands. Madison, can you hear me? It's your stepsister. If you can hear this, you need to get away from whoever is in there with you. Agent Walsh yanked the radio back, furious. You just compromised our operation. But her anger was drowned out by chaos erupting from the second floor team. Subject is moving toward the hostage. He heard the broadcast. We're going in now. The warehouse cameras showed tactical officers swarming the building from multiple entry points, but I could see on the second floor feed that the man with the crowbar was dragging Madison toward what looked like a window. There's a fire escape on the east side, I remembered suddenly. If he gets her outside. Agent Walsh was already shouting coordinates, but I could see we were too late. The man had Madison on her feet, the crowbar pressed against her throat, backing toward the window. That's when the basement camera caught something that changed everything. Richard Morrison, very much not in custody, emerged from behind a stack of supply boxes with a gas can in his hands. He was going to burn the entire building down with Madison inside. The sight of Richard with that gas can triggered something primal in me. I was out of the surveillance van before Agent Walsh could stop me, sprinting toward the warehouse's main entrance. OP, get back here, she shouted, but I was already inside. The smell of gasoline was overwhelming on the first floor. Richard had been thorough, fuel splashed across document boxes, soaking into wooden pallets, creating a death trap that would incinerate everything within minutes. I could hear him above me, heavy footsteps moving methodically as he prepared to destroy 20 years of evidence along with his own daughter. I found the service stairs and took them 2 at a time. The second floor was chaos. FBI agents had cornered the man with Madison, but he was backed against the fire escape window, using her as a human shield. Through the smoke beginning to drift up from below, I could see Madison's terrified face. Let her go, Tony, one of the agents was saying. The building's compromised. We all need to get out. So this was Tony Vasquez, Richard's missing partner. The man who'd supposedly disappeared was actually here, cleaning up loose ends. She knows too much, Tony snarled, pressing the crowbar tighter against Madison's throat. They all know too much. That's when I saw Richard emerge from the stairwell behind the FBI team, a lit road flare in his hand. Dad! Madison screamed when she saw him. Richard's face was a mask of cold determination. I'm sorry, baby girl. But this is the only way to protect the family. The moment slowed to crystal clarity. Richard was going to drop that flare whether Madison escaped or not. Tony was going to hurt her if the FBI moved closer. And somewhere in this building were files that could destroy dozens of innocent families whose breadwinners worked for legitimate construction companies caught up in this corruption. But Madison, manipulative, cruel Madison who had systematically destroyed my life, was still my stepsister. And she was about to die because of information I'd uncovered. Richard. I shouted, stepping into the room with my hands raised. You want to destroy evidence. I'm the evidence. I'm the one who recorded everything, who took all the photos. Madison was just trying to protect you. Every eye in the room turned to me. Agent Walsh's voice crackled through someone's radio. OP, what the hell are you doing? Madison never knew about the construction fraud until yesterday, I continued, moving slowly toward Richard. She was just a jealous stepsister trying to make my life difficult. The real threat is me and everything I documented. Richard's grip on the flare wavered. You're lying. Madison knew. She helped coordinate the surveillance. Because you told her I was planning something vindictive against your business, I said, finally understanding the full scope of their manipulation. You used her jealousy to turn her into your spy. She thought she was protecting family, not covering up crimes. I could see the truth hitting Madison's face, how her father had manipulated her genuine emotions to serve his criminal enterprise. All those photos, all those recordings. I pulled out my phone. I'm deleting them. Right now. In front of everyone. OP, don't, Agent Walsh's voice came through the radios, but I was already opening my photo gallery. Richard stepped closer, the flare lowering slightly. Delete them. All of them. Let Madison go first, I bargained. She's not a threat to you anymore. I am. Tony's grip loosened just enough for Madison to break free. She stumbled toward the FBI agents as Richard grabbed my phone, watching me delete photo after photo of his incriminating invoices. What Richard didn't know was that I'd already uploaded everything to cloud storage yesterday. The moment Madison was clear, Agent Walsh's voice exploded through the radios, take them down. The tactical team moved with precision that was beautiful to watch. Tony went down hard, the crowbar clattering away harmlessly. Richard dropped the flare in shock, but an agent was already there to stomp it out. As they cuffed Richard, he looked at me with something that might have been respect. You're tougher than I thought, stepdaughter. 6 months later, I stood in a federal courthouse watching Richard Morrison and Tony Vasquez get sentenced to 12 years each for conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. Marcus Hendricks had already pled guilty in exchange for testimony that brought down 8 other municipal contractors. Madison sat 2 rows behind me with Mom, both of them still processing how completely they'd been manipulated. Madison's charges had been reduced to misdemeanor harassment after she testified against her father's operation. She transferred to a college across the country, finally ready to build a life that wasn't defined by her father's expectations. The $40 million in fraudulent contracts were being audited and rebuilt properly. The Morrison Elementary Foundation was getting reinforced. The senior living facility was being rewired. The university housing project was delayed but would be constructed to actual safety standards. Jake found me on the courthouse steps afterward. So, what's next for the girl who brought down a crime syndicate? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. Maybe something boring. Like focusing on my actual studies instead of accidentally uncovering municipal corruption. Emma joined us, grinning. Though you have to admit, your investigative journalism skills are pretty impressive now. As we walked toward campus together, real friends who'd stood by me when everything fell apart, I realized something important. Madison's lies had nearly destroyed my life, but fighting back had taught me who I really was. Someone who wouldn't stay silent when people were in danger. Someone who could stand up to bullies, even when they had all the power. Someone whose stepsister's petty revenge had accidentally made her much, much stronger.